Hello everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. On the screen you can see our agenda for today. I'm going to start the session by giving some information about the qualification overview before talking through each of the units individually. Then I'll cover the internal and external assessment procedures. I'll just do a quick introduction before we start. My name's Karen Taylor. I work in the curriculum team here at NCFE. The purpose of the curriculum team is to support centres with the planning, delivery and assessment of our qualifications. You can see our email address there on the screen, and I will be sharing that again at the end of the session should you have any queries following the webinar today. So this qualification is aimed at post-16-year-old learners, and it's designed for learners who want to study art and or design at a higher level. It's aimed at those who are motivated by applied learning through hands-on, creative experiences related to the work of a professional artist or designer. There aren't any specific recommended prior learning requirements, although it would obviously be preferable if learners have achieved a Level 2 qualification in an art and design related subject. It is the centre's responsibility for ensuring the qualifications appropriate for the age and ability of learners, and centres do need to ensure that learners can fulfil the requirements of the learning outcomes and comply with the relevant literacy, numeracy and health and safety aspects of the qualification. So the qualification has a recommended 360 guided learning hours, or GLH, which is the same as A-level qualifications, plus 18 hours for an external assessment. The total qualification time, or TQT, for the qualification is 540 hours. So this additional time could include independent learning, work experience or educational visits. The qualification does carry UCAS points, which are shown on the screen, so ranging from 16 for a pass up to 56 for a distinction star. You can see from this chart here that the qualification consists of 5 units, each with a recommended GLH of 60 hours, and that's with the exception of Unit 5, which is double weighted at 120 GLH. All of the units are internally assessed, so after the content has been delivered for each unit, learners must complete an internal assessment. This will, as the name suggests, be assessed internally at the centre by the member or members of staff delivering the qualification. There's then a requirement for an internal quality assurance procedure to take place within the centre. That's before an external quality assurer, or EQA, from NCFE will visit your centre to look at a sample of learner work. Again, we'll discuss this in more detail later in the webinar, but to help you benchmark your learner's achievement, NCFE has produced a sample folio which is available to download from the qualification page on the NCFE website. Content from Units 1, 2, 3 and 5 will also be assessed via an external assessment, which again I'm going to talk about in more detail later in the session. On this slide you can see a list of the disciplines that the qualification's been designed to be suitable for. You can see that a wide range is included on the list, but ultimately what is covered will be decided by centres. Okay, so moving on to the unit content. Unit 1 is titled Materials, Techniques and Processes in Art and Design and has 3 learning outcomes. For Learning Outcome 1, the learners will understand safe practices in their working environment. This includes the correct use of PPE, current health and safety legislation, for example the Health and Safety at Work Act, COSH and any legislation surrounding the use of PPE. How to carry out a risk assessment in their work environment, for which learners are required to look at potential hazards and risks, who is at risk, control and prevention measures and risk rating. The evidence for this learning outcome, it must include a completed risk assessment and a report describing the findings from the risk assessment in relation to their working practices, and this should be done before experimentation with materials, techniques and processes for Learning Outcome 2. It is important to note that there's no merit or distinction grade available for this learning outcome. For learning outcome 2, learners must show that they've experimented with a variety of materials, techniques and processes across disciplines. These are the disciplines that I referred to earlier in the presentation, and there isn't a definitive number for how many disciplines need to be covered, but there are examples provided and they are on page 24 of the qualification specification that you can refer to. In order to achieve merit and distinction grades for this learning outcome, learners must show that they've used their experimentation to develop a body of work and inform future practice. For learning outcome 3, learners must evaluate how materials, techniques or processes affect their practice. It's important to remember that learners aren't required at this point to produce a final evaluation of their work. This should be an ongoing review of their use of materials, processes and techniques. And this could be in the form of a studio or workshop journal, a report or presentation, or even a blog would be acceptable. On this screen you can see the brief for Unit 1 from the Internal Assessment Sample Tasks document. That's available for you to download from the website, and that covers all of the units in this qualification. There's a brief provided for each of the units, and you can see on the following slide an extract from the sample assessment document. This is Task 2, which assesses Learning Outcome 2 from Unit 1. You can see that there are clear instructions for learners along with examples of the types of evidence that are appropriate, and also the grading descriptors so that learners can see what's required for each grade. This level of detail is provided for each of the tasks in the sample assessment document. Unit 2 is a research project in art and design, and again has 3 learning outcomes. For learning outcome 1, learners will research artwork and or design work, and this will form the basis for the development of their practical work for learning outcome 2. Learners could be looking at, for example, primary sources, secondary sources, quantitative and qualitative methods, online sources, for example, gallery websites, fanzines and forums. They could also look at documentaries, journals, archived material and academic articles, but they must use more than one type of source, and they also need to assess the validity and reliability of their sources. For how their findings will inform their personal response, learners could consider themes, style, materials and visual language. Further examples are given in the delivery and assessment section of the specification. For learning outcome 2, learners will use technical skills to produce a piece of art and or design work in response to the research they carried out in learning outcome 1. So the focus of this learning outcome should be the learner's response to the research conducted earlier in the unit. Learning outcome 3 involves the learner evaluating how the research influenced their response, in particular how the research influenced their use of materials, techniques and processes, and their use of formal elements and visual language. Evidence for this learning outcome could include an essay, a presentation, a website, or again a blog would be appropriate. On this slide you can see the sample assessment brief for Unit 2. I'll just leave this here for you to read for a moment. As with the previous unit, the tasks that accompany the brief have been written to address each of the learning outcomes. So moving on to Unit 3, Communicate Visually. In this unit, learners will study examples of how themes, ideas and messages can be communicated visually using art and or design. For learning outcome 1, learners need to demonstrate how formal elements are used to visually communicate in others' art and or design work, and how meaning is communicated visually. There's a list of what examples of others' art and or design work could include on page 32 of the qualification specification, but examples include street art, packaging, signage, conceptual art and fashion. Also on that page you'll see examples of how formal elements are used to visually communicate, including shape, texture and composition, and how meaning is communicated visually. Types of evidence for this learning outcome could include annotated swatches, mood boards and diagrams, or a report or a presentation. For learning outcome 2, The learner must demonstrate the use of visual language to communicate a chosen theme, idea or message, including technical skills, visual language and medium or media. The grading descriptors for this learning outcome explain that for a learner to achieve a distinction, their work must show consistent and effective combination of technical skills and use of visual language and media to communicate their idea or message. On page 34 of the specification, you can find examples of technical skills, visual language and medium or media for reference. For Learning Outcome 3, learners are required to review the work they produced in Learning Outcome 2 with particular focus on how they use technical skills, visual language and the chosen media to communicate their theme or message. Evidence could include a video, a report, a presentation, or again a blog would be acceptable here. So here you can see the brief from the internal assessment sample task for Unit 3. It is quite lengthy, so I'm just going to leave it here for a while so you can read it. And again, the accompanying tasks address the different learning outcomes for the unit. Unit 4 requires learners to present and promote their work. This unit is internally assessed only and again has 3 learning outcomes, so there's no external assessment for this unit. For Learning Outcome 1, learners must know how to promote their art and or design work, considering format, context, environment and type of presentation, and also the types of audience, the range of opportunities to promote their work, and different types of promotion. The evidence for this learning outcome must include a proposal, which may include a plan, annotated screenshots and photographs, a presentation, which could be digital or interactive, or a video recording with commentary. You can find examples of the types of evidence that would be appropriate on page 37 of the qualification specification. For Learning Outcome 2, learners will produce a presentation of their work and promote it using the proposal from Learning Outcome 1, and evidence must be in both digital and physical form. So an exhibition would need video or photographic evidence of the event. Again, you can find examples of appropriate types of evidence in the qualification specification. For Learning Outcome 3, learners will review the presentation and promotion of their work from Learning Outcomes 1 and 2. They must analyse the effectiveness of the initial proposal, along with the strengths and weaknesses of their presentation and promotion. The brief for the internal assessment sample task for Unit 4 doesn't have much detail, but this can be contextualised to suit your situation. So for example, you might have an exhibition within your centre that could be used here. It might be seasonal, or it might just be a one-off exhibition that learners could access. More detail about the types of evidence that would be appropriate again can be found in the qualification specification and also on the internal assessment task itself. Unit 5 is the double weighted unit, so has a recommended 120 GLH as opposed to units 1 to 4 which have 60 GLH. There is no sample task for this unit, as Learning Outcome 1 requires learners to produce their own statement of intent, for which they must produce research, a detailed plan and a rationale for the viability and feasibility of the personal response. The statement of intent must show application of specialist knowledge developed throughout the previous 4 units. For Learning Outcome 2, learners must produce a personal response initiated by the statement of intent in Learning Outcome 1. To achieve this learning outcome, learners must show synthesis of technical skills, visual language and media in producing their personal response. Learning Outcome 3 requires learners to evaluate their ongoing process during the development of their personal response. This should include details of materials, techniques and processes used, creative directions, has the theme, idea of or message changed from the original intent, and unexpected outcomes. For this learning outcome, evidence must include a studio or workshop journal and could include a reflective journal, notes and annotations, sketches, swatches, mood boards and diagrams, photographs or again a blog. So that brings us to the end of the unit content. So I'm going to talk through the internal quality assurance process that needs to be followed with the internally assessed units. So for each of the 5 units that make up this qualification, learners must complete an internal assessment. So as I mentioned earlier, NCFE have produced internal assessment sample tasks which you can use as they are. You can contextualize the sample task to suit your own circumstances, or alternatively you can create your own, in which case the internal assessment writing and delivery guide should be referred to. Whichever task you choose to use, the work produced by learners must be subjected to internal quality assurance. Once the learner work's been assessed, an internal quality assurer or IQA from your centre will need to look at a sample of the assessed work to check that the NCFE standard has been applied consistently across the cohort. Who carries out the IQA role is up to the centre to decide, but you must remember that an assessor can't IQA their own work, and we do recommend that the IQA is occupationally competent. If you have more than one teacher delivering the qualification, they can IQA each other's work, or alternatively we have seen different centres IQAing each other's work. So you've set the internal assessment, your learners have submitted their evidence and you've graded the work. Your learner doesn't get feedback at all until the quality assurance process has been completed. The next step is the IQA process, and at that point you can submit the learner grades onto the NCFE portal, for which the key contact at your centre will have details to log on. Next comes your EQA visit. So your EQA, External Quality Assurer, is allocated to you when you first register your learners. We recommend that you register as soon as possible so you can get in touch and get support regarding the qualification content, and also plan in your visits. When you submit your grades, your EQA gets an automatic notification email. We hope that you'll already have a date arranged as part of your planning, but if you haven't, then get in touch and sort a mutually convenient time. Please remember though that they do have a lot of centres to cover, so they won't be able to fit visits in at short notice. At the visit, your EQA is basically doing what your IQA has done, sampling the learner's work, looking at feedback to the learners, but also they look at the IQA feedback to you as the assessor. Is the feedback supportive? Have they agreed grades? What discussions taken place if they aren't in agreement, etc. They'll discuss with you whether they agree the grades or not, and if they do, the grades are banked. This means that at this point, this is your first submission. You can then give learners the work back with summative feedback, and if needs be, the learner can resubmit if a higher grade is wanted. If they don't agree, they'll discuss clearly why this is the case. Maybe you mark too harshly or too leniently. They'll then reject the grades on the portal and you have to resubmit the agreed grades. This again is just your first submission. If the learners do want to resubmit, then the process is repeated with the work being sampled at the second visit. The second visit may be face-to-face again, or it could be remote where you send the work to the EQA directly. When you have a bank grade for the internally assessed unit or units and a result for the external assessment, you can then claim the certificate. Again, this is via the NCFE portal. The externally assessed element of this qualification covers content from Units 1, 2, 3 and 5, and these are assessed synoptically via an 18-hour practical task assessing the application of knowledge and skills. The 18 hours is divided into 5 hours of supervised time and 13 hours of invigilated time, and the external assessment represents 50% of the overall qualification. During the 5 hours supervised time, learners will complete Task 1, which involves analysis and research. Then during the invigilated time, learners will complete Tasks 2 and 3, for which they must produce a statement of intent and create a personal response. To support your delivery, you can find a sample external assessment paper on the Qual Hub section of the website. This can be used as a mock exam to familiarise your learners with the format of the papers. There you'll also find a mark scheme, and as the qualification ages, examiners' reports. On this slide, you'll find links to some important documents for anyone involved in the delivery of the qualification. Documents that have been referred to throughout the session are also hyperlinked for you. As I mentioned, the external assessment for this qualification is an 18-hour practical task. For this type of assessment, NCFE will publish an assessment window for when an assessment must be completed, and you'll find the external assessment timetable using the link on the screen. This will give you dates and times of assessments for the coming session. You'll also see a link here to our regulations for the conduct of external assessment, which should be read by anyone involved with the delivery of the qualification. You also have a link to the qualification-specific instructions for delivery document, which we call the QSID. This will provide you with the instructions specific to each individual qualification, and again, it's important to familiarise yourself with this. The last document on this slide is our Reasonable Adjustments and Special Considerations policy. All learners should have access to our qualifications and assessments where possible. So if your learner has any special needs that have already been assessed formally, then you can submit a request for reasonable adjustments. If your learner already has authorisation from JCQ, then you can attach this to the request and it speeds the process up. You should check the document to see what you have to apply for and what is a centre delegated adjustment. It's important to get these requests into us in a timely manner. The document itself provides timescales for us to accept requests. Reasonable adjustments are applied for before the assessment via the website, and special considerations can be requested as soon as possible after the assessment has taken place, immediately if possible, but no later than 7 working days, again via the website. I hope that's given you a good introduction to the Applied General Certificate in Art and Design, but if you do have any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks again for watching. Bye.